Hello everyone, Nadlabs here. And I know no one requested this tutorial, but I think this tutorial is actually very important for the next few tutorials I'm going to be making, which revolve around map generation and how to create really interesting map patterns. But to make that tutorial and hopefully to help everyone understand that, I want to make sure I make this really simple tutorial on how to make a very simple box appear on a tile map, which is randomly generated each time. And eventually, if you modify the code just a teensy tiny bit, you could get really interesting patterns, and basically like this is almost a map. You can do that really simply, and hopefully I'll go over it and let's get right into it. Okay, so my scene is actually very simple. I just have a tile map, that's it, and I have a tile set. In my tile set I have a Godot image, and I have this small, actually you know what? I'm gonna make the tile set from brand new, so I'm actually just gonna get rid of everything, and I'm gonna start fresh. So I have a tile map, and I'm going to first set myself. Actually, I want to make my tile set. So I want to make my tiles really small. So I get, it fits in the default Godot viewport, which is just from over here, which is the purple line, essentially. And you can see I have these purple squares that show up. Now, what I want to do is I just want to highlight any region, and I want to go over here to my step, and I want to set my step to, I don't know, let's say 4x4. And you can see that it divides this Godot icon. I should increase the size. It divides this Godot image into a lot of small squares. I'm just going to select that square because it's just one color. So I'm going to save my tile map. Yep. I'm going to overwrite that old file, which we saw at the beginning of the video. And I'm just going to go over here to my tile size and set 4x4. Now, what I just did is I made a tile set, and I made the tile set 4x4. And I'm just going to make this black. And now, basically what I did is I made this little paintbrush where I could draw with black pixels. That's all I did. I made these tiles, which this tile, I could draw around on this tile map, and that's basically it. And now we have one tile. Now, you might be asking, well, how can we make rooms with just one tile? Well, we can basically say anything that's black is a wall or some barrier, and anything that's not black, so let's say it was like this, anything that's inside this circle, we could say anything that's inside of this area over here, this gray area, which is where the player can walk, but anything that's in the black area is where the player can't walk. So let's actually just clear everything. Let's clear all these drawings. Okay. So let me just make this. So I cleared everything, and now we're going to go attach a script, load, and we have or it's create for you actually, and now we have our tile map. Now it's empty, obviously, but let's add in. Let's think from first principles. How would we even go about creating those rooms that we saw at the beginning of the video? If this is our like scene tree, or if this is our scene, right? If this is our actual if this is the scene, then what we could do is we could say something like, first of all, it's actually gray. So if it's gray, let's set all the tiles to black, and then after setting them to black, let's say that we grab a random position somewhere. Let's say we grab this area right here, and we're going to say make a random X and a random Y amount, and we're going to set every tile in this area to none. We're going to set it to none essentially, and that's almost like saying grabbing this and this color, and that's essentially like saying making it a gray square. And that's kind of what we saw at the beginning of the video. We're just grabbing a random position in our tree, or not in our tree, but in our game scene. We're grabbing a random position, grabbing a random X, grabbing a random Y, and just setting all those tiles inside that square or that range to nothing. And we can basically make as many boxes as we want. Hopefully not outside the actual scene, but if that's something you're working on, like a bigger map, yeah, you can definitely do that. That's not an issue. But that's basically what we're doing, and it's not that hard because we only need two functions. So in our ready function, we could have a make back black. Okay, tongue twister. And then we have make a box. So what could we say in make back black? Well, first of all, let's get a couple numbers down. We need to get the X direction, so 255. And we need to get a height, which is our height variable is, or you can see the way I'm getting it, I'm not sure if this will show up on YouTube, but there's this purple line, which is the end of the camera or the scene. And I'm just getting that value, and it's in the bottom left. So over here, you can see it says 149. We just have to make it one bigger than that, because that's how the loop will stop at that exact number. And we don't want it to stop down here, or else we'll just get a row of tiles down here, and they should be black. We'll just get a row of tiles down here. We actually wanted to get one more. So if it's 149 here, we have to type in 150 over here. So how do we make a back black or a background? We could basically say something like 4x in width, which is just a loop, and 4y in height, which is just another loop. So this is a nested loop, or it's just fancy terminology for meaning you have a loop inside of a loop. And we're basically going to say set cell x and y to 0. The reason we have to say 0 is because you can see over here icon PNG, and in icon PNG it says after the icon PNG it says 0, and 0 is actually the tile number. If we had more tiles, it would say 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever. But this black tile at least is just 0. And when I run the scene, you can see I get a background. And you can see that I actually didn't make, oops, this shouldn't be too big. You can see that I did not make the actual value one more than it has to. And when I rerun this scene, you can see I get this line over here. That's because it's actually 255. I have to do 256. And I also want an easier way to rerun the scene after I make a change. So I'm just going to go over here to my input function, and I'm just going to say if event.isActionPressed R. So I actually set this up ahead of time, and I went to my project settings. I typed in R over here, and I just said when I click the letter R, do something. And what I'm going to be doing is get tree.reload current scene. And now when I run the scene, of course it doesn't look like it, but I'm actually restarting the scene, but whatever. Now we're going to make a box. How can we make a box? Well, according to our first principles approach at the beginning, we said that we're just going to get if we just think from pure logic, like how could we get a box? We could just say grab a random position, grab a random X amount, grab a random Y amount, and then just say fill in that area. It's not that complicated. So again, we could do something similar. In fact, I'll just copy paste this. So 4x in width, 4y in height. Actually, no, I don't want to do 4x in width, 4y in height. What I want to say is, and I shouldn't have, it doesn't matter. What I want to say is var x room size, right? Let's just say x size, okay, or x room. So this is the size of the room. So we can do a random range from, let's say, 5 to 10 pixels or 10 squares. Or actually, let's do, because we're doing a really small tile size, which is a 4x4. It would be better if we did something like, we just zoom out. So that's what it was. So that was, we could actually just do it from on the side. It'll just tell us the number. So maybe around from like 25 to around 10. So let's just do 10 to 20. And of course, these are just experimental artistic values, or let's do 30. You have to make these up on your own for your own game and your tile size. Remember, if you're using a tile size that's a lot larger, and I'm guessing you might, then of course you have to readjust these to whatever values work for your game. So we can basically say for x in x room and for y in y room, we're just going to be setting the cell to x and y and -1. The reason why we have to do -1 is if I go into my documentation for the tile map, you can see that underneath enumerations, no, not in constants, invalid cell is -1, which means it will just return a blank cell, like what we have in front of us. These are filled in cells, these are unfilled in cells. These are -1. These black cells are cell 0. If we had more cells, and I'll show that later on, we could put in 2, 3, whatever. It doesn't matter. But now when we run the scene, you can see that we get a box. But remember, at the beginning of the video, I said we want to grab a random position, a random spot on the grid where we can actually place down our box. And we haven't done that yet. Well, how can we do that? So if I just hop back to my scene, how can we do that? Well, we could basically say a couple things. We could say, we could grab a margin. So of course we don't want our rooms to be right up against the wall. We want them to be like somewhere in the middle. And we could say something like margin like 40. Of course you want your margin to be smaller than your max room size, or else again we'll have that issue where your room overflows and crosses the scene. But that's not an issue if you wanted to make your game like really large. Just putting that out there. And then we could say something like var x offset. And let's say our offset is going to be a random range from the margin to the width minus the margin. What does that mean? Well, that literally means that we are going to be saying, so of course we're working on the x direction. So let's say our margin is, what was it, 40? So this is where 40 is. So everything over here is going to be off limits. There's no room that can spawn over here. And width minus margin means go to the width, which is 256, go minus 40, so minus 40 is about there, and nothing can spawn here. We're going to do something similar for the Y, and that leaves a box in the middle where we can actually just spawn any box we want. So we're making a box for our box. So these little gray tiles will only be allowed to spawn in this green square that I just drew, or let's just do this brown square that I just drew. Only these gray boxes will only be able to spawn in here. And we can just copy that line, change it to Y offset, and do it for height. And then we can basically say something like set cell plus X offset, of course, because what is an offset? It's something that you want to add or subtract to a certain value. And when I run the scene, you can see I get a bunch of boxes. And that's basically it. And this is very close to making a map, because if you do 4i and 20, which means we're just looping over it 20 times, you can see that we're basically getting a map-like structure. If I do 4i and 50, then we basically have a map, because the chances of these rooms being connected is pretty high. And there are ways to actually figure out if they're connected, and that's a different tutorial altogether. But I'm going to bring in another asset. Just give me a second. In fact, I'll make the asset in front of you. So let's just go over here to my paint. I'm going to resize it so that it's 4x4. Remember, that's a tile size. I'm just going to make it a orange tile. And I'm going to go save it on, those are my cat memes folder. Oops. So I'm going to go grab this, save it over there. And I'm just going to save it orange 4. And that's just my naming convention for saying something like this is a orange image that's 4 pixels wide. And we're going to go to our tile set, drag in this PNG, and now we have our image. And I'm going to go to new single tile, make this bigger so you can see, and I'm going to click it, and that's it. So now we have, remember I said that icon.png had 0, this will have 1, and of course anything else you have 2, 3, 4, whatever. And we can basically say something like, instead of -1, we can say 1. And now we will get black backgrounds with orange rooms, and we are not getting orange rooms. Why is that? We're not getting orange rooms because I had the colors turned off. Silly me. So now you can see we're getting a blue background because the Godot sprite is blue, but that doesn't matter. It's the same idea. And you can see we're getting these rooms, and the only reason we're getting multiple is because I said 4i and 50, which is a loop of 50. If I do I 100, the chances of getting a connected room from left to right pretty high. And basically we're making boxes using nothing but a few lines of code, which is pretty insane. Like, this is all you need, and this is only one script. So with that being said, have an amazing day, and I'm just going to roll the outro.